From every strand on the line of your reel, to the rods, to the anglers, to the lures on the end of your hook, let's talk about those big bass here on Co-Angler's Corner with your hosts, Rob Welch and John Stoudinger.
Good evening, everybody. I'm John.
Hi, y'all are. Cajun Rob here hanging out with you.
I'll never get over that, man. It just gets me every time.
I know. That's why I do it.
Well, I'm stuck in the basement here. My wife's up there upstairs making sugar cookies, and she's already warned me not to touch them.
Uh-oh.
When I go up there, because she's going to work here in a couple hours. So, but no, tonight on our special Thursday edition, we have Cliff Pace. He's a professional bass angler and renowned lure designer. 2013 Bassmaster Classic winner. He's the founder of Black Label Balsa and Company. Makes high quality handcrafted balsa baits. And he's just stepped into, I say just, I don't know how long it's been, but he's starting to make some plastic as well. So let's bring Cliff up and get to talk to him for a few minutes.
Oh, and Bassmaster Classic champion, and from South Mississippi, my kind of my home area.
Yes.
How's it going, guys?
Hey, how's it going, buddy?
Good. How are you, sir?
Good. Just got home from work, been at the shop all day, which is pretty much my daily routine if I'm not on the road fishing. So just got home just in time to sit down and chat with y'all for a while.
Man, we appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Yes, sir. So when I reached out to you, we were going to talk about the balsa and plastic differences.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, it depends on how you look at it. So, your original crankbaits were made from wood. Your very original, your Big O's, and then to my knowledge, that was basically the first lipped crankbait was a Big O. And then, you had your Bagley era come along with Jim Bagley and Lee Sisson, and Sisson broke off and formed Sisson Lures. And then, prior to that, but not in our country, was Rapala coming out of Finland. And all those baits were made from wood. And as technology advanced, people started manufacturing from injected plastic. And I will say, I'll be the first to say this, I make wooden baits, but there has been and still are a tremendous amount of really good plastic baits on the market. I'm not the guy that's sitting here trying to say that a wooden crankbait that's it, right? If it's not wood, it's useless, because that's not the truth. They're really just two different materials basically making the same product. And when you use two different materials, you're going to get benefits from one and benefits from the other that give certain ones characteristics that are better for certain things, and vice versa. But really, people ask me that question all the time, like, what's the difference between balsa and plastic, and balsa and plastic, and balsa and plastic? Well, the benefits of plastic are you can definitely produce a plastic bait more consistently. And the reason why is you're dealing with far less variables. And it's not really even the handmade factor that most wooden baits are built around. It's really just the wood. You cannot, it doesn't matter if it's balsa wood, pine wood, cedar, cypress, it's irrelevant. There's just not an exact consistency to wood lumber of any kind that there is in a barrel of man-made PTE plastic, right? So you're dealing with different densities, different grain patterns, and all that is kind of what gives balsa, I think, its cult type following, right? Because even if I build 100 baits, the goal is to build 100 baits that are identical. But at the end of the day, none of them can be perfectly identical. But then plastic also gives you a lot of other benefits. I can't make a transparent, as much as I would love to make a transparent balsa bait, I can't do it because my material is obviously wood. So, you can get those real sexy, natural, see-through, transparent colors more so out of plastic than you can out of balsa. Most plastic baits now in the last 5 to 7 years, you see the majority of plastic baits are built with a weight transfer system in them, which is very easy to do in injection molding because you're building two halves, and then you can just build a slide tray and I've seen people use magnets. I've seen them use tungsten balls, steel balls, but you can build a slide tray inside the bait where that weight transfer system is very easy to put in place. I'm not saying you couldn't build a weight transfer system in a balsa bait, because I actually have done it just out of curiosity, and I know others have too. But it's a much more tedious process than what it is building it, out of a blank that's basically come out of a machine that you're either gluing or sonic welding together after you put the pieces in it. Some of the other things about plastic, most plastic baits, not only are they going to be more consistent because they are from a material standpoint, but they're going to be more consistent just because they're coming out of a cavity. I mean, if the cavity fills, they're all the same. It's like when you make ice cubes at home. If you put the exact amount of water in every tray, you've just made a million identical ice cubes. But the way balsa baits are formed and shaped and sanded, it's very hard to get that type of an exact tolerances. One more characteristics I'll say about plastic baits is you see a lot of your like really deep diving crankbaits. I'm talking like your 16, 20 foot plus and up deep diving baits. The plastic market's kind of always dominated that, and it's really due to the fact that you do have a weight transfer system, so you can cast the bait farther. But not only that, you can also inject your lip when you manufacture the bait, so the lip can have a curvature or a cup that's going to actually pull and catch more water, causing the bait to run deeper. So both have their attributes, and that's kind of my take on what I think makes a better use of plastic baits. Jerk baits, man, I have messed with. I mean, I'm a bait making junkie. Okay, I love to piddle and tinker. Even when I'm not at my shop working 16 hours a day, I'll come home and mess with something just for me type thing. And most of the time it's just out of curiosity. Making a wooden jerk bait, it's almost impossible because the tolerance is there to try to make a bait suspend is so exact, requiring. It's even difficult. I mean, I've become really good friends over the years with a lot of guys that are on the plastic side of it, that not just painters, but guys that actually design and draw and build molds and make blanks. And I know even for them, they'll even say that a jerk bait is by far the hardest bait to get just exactly right. And we've seen that over the years. I think that's why you see a lot of your high-end jerk bait on the market maintain their market share against a lot of your knockoff versions or cheaper versions, is just simply that, because of the time and the energy and the effort it takes to keep those. I mean, one out of clear coat on a jerk bait can destroy it, right? The weighting on them has to be that exact. But all those things that I just said that were kind of negative about balsa, about it's not consistent, it's not this, it's not that, is actually what makes it great. There's a lot of people over the years that I've met that have these baits that they call like a magic bait. Yeah. And it's just a bait, but there's something about this bait. They may have 20 of the exact identical wooden baits, and there's one out of that 20 that just, for whatever reason, it just outperforms. It catches more fish. It'll catch fish when the other ones won't, even though it's the exact same model, it's the exact same brand, it's the exact same color. And it just kind of, I think a lot of times it gets in our head. Maybe we go fish with it on a really good day and we're like, wow, they'll just absolutely annihilate this one. There's something about it that's special. But sometimes I do think that there truly is something about it that's special, and it's something that can't be replicated. Okay, I've spent the last 20 years of my life making these things, and when I've ran across that magical bait deal, I mean, the first thing I want to do is tear it apart, which kind of sucks because you no longer have the bait, but is tear it apart and kind of see what makes it magical. And most of the time you really can't tell. Okay, I mean, you just can't, it's just something about it. Maybe it was offset density in the wood. Maybe it was heavier on one side and lighter on the other, or something like that. But that's the cool thing about balsa, is that because of its inconsistency, it's consistent enough to make a bait that they all perform well. But occasionally you get that one-off bait that's like magic. And I've never met anybody yet that was like, man, I have this one such and such plastic bait that's just hands down better than all the other ones I have. They're the exact same identical bait. When you put that into the world of fishing and you think about all these baits being different, you know, we all talk about fishing pressure and fish getting conditioned. Well, that's the cool thing about a balsa bait. You can take a handmade balsa bait, whether it's mine or anybody else's, and go fishing with it. And you can honestly feel like you have a bait that feels from a vibration standpoint, which is important to a fish. It feels a little different than anything they've ever felt before. It's not what's coming by their head 7 days a week that is the number one hot selling plastic bait down at the local tackle shop. So that's the cool thing about balsa. The other cool thing about balsa, if you look at balsa's history, the two places that balsa baits have always just thrived have been in, cold water flat bait type lure designs and also in square bills. And if you look at the cold water deal, I don't know what it is about a thin piece of balsa, but it just swims so natural and so beautiful in the water. And I also think that, the density of that balsa wood compared to plastic, because a plastic bait's hollow. The density of that balsa wood is what is enabling that bait, to do what it does. And if you look back even at some of your original mass-produced baits that were really awesome cold water baits, a perfect example is a shad wrap. How many companies in the last 25 years made a plastic shad wrap? And none of them ever performed like the balsa ones. Not in that super cold, super hard to get a bite scenario. When I was a kid, when it was like it is right now, we just had a snowstorm. If you went fishing, that was what you reached in your tackle box and got. You got you out of either a jig or you got you out of shad wrap, and you just grind it away. Plastic, for some reason, just doesn't produce in that type of environment or scenario like balsa wood does. And the other thing is, the square bills. Because balsa is so much more, has such a higher flotation rate now. They all have lead ballast in them. So depending on how much lead ballast you put in it, you're obviously affecting that flotation rate. But balsa naturally, on a good design bait, most all of them are going to float up in a reverse fashion. You crank a plastic bait down under the surface and watch it, and most of them are going to just rise slowly to the surface. Well, that's all fine and good until you crank it up underneath the limb, and then it's hung up. Where balsa baits, if you crank them down, if you watch them, they just naturally want to rise up like this. And that's what's caused balsa baits for the guys that, live down here where I live, kind of in the swamp part of the southeast, where we have a lot of cypress trees and we have a lot of blowed down wood cover, pine trees, oak trees. We fish a lot of river systems down here that are just full of wood cover. All the Louisiana Delta, like the Atchafalaya Basin, that's the largest swamp in the country to my knowledge. Endless wood targets to throw a bait at. Balsa just flat out works better, and it just does. It just comes through that. I'm not saying a plastic square bill won't catch a bass, because it will, but if you throw a balsa bait in wood cover, you're going to spend less time retrieving your bait 9 times out of 10 than what you're going to with a plastic bait. So, both materials kind of lean themselves to better uses than the other in certain scenarios. I have a boat full of balsa. Obviously, I make them, so I don't normally run into a shortage issue. But I also have a lot of plastic baits, and I do think there's times where there's a need for both.
Absolutely.
Yes. We got a couple comments here we want to get to real quick. Barking Ruger says, loves the hell out of your balsa baits. First crankbaits he's ever owned.
Hey man, that's awesome.
All right.
He's down in the snow capital of Louisiana.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he sounds good.
Yeah. Hopefully our snow season's coming to a rapid end.
Hope so.
Small Water Charter says Okeechobee dropping off a thumbs up.
Cool.
Yeah, I'll be there in Okeechobee in a few weeks.
Yep.
Awesome.
And Barking Ruger's come back with that float and backup action is what allows us to fish them in the swamp.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I've gotten into building some deeper balsa baits in the last 3 to 5 years, and they have that same characteristics. So now, if I'm cranking brush piles out in 10, 12, 14 foot of water, a balsa bait will do the same thing out there that it does up shallow.
Oh yeah.
So the depth thing doesn't really affect the way it rises up in reverse. So I really have gotten fond of cranking deeper. I say deeper, that's a relative term, but anything in that 10 to 14 foot range, I can really comfortably, if there's brush or wood cover, brush or big stumps, any type of wood cover that I'm worried about getting hung up on it. And another thing up there in your part of the world is all that jagged rock that y'all have, John. Some of that stuff up there, like up on Champlain and stuff, there's tons of fish on it, but you can't crank it without staying hung up. It's all that glacier form rock, and it's just got millions of little cracks and crevices, and that stuff's worse than any brush pile I ever fished in my life. And those deeper diving balsa baits, they'll back right out of that just like they will wood.
I got a funny for you, Cliff. I was fishing in Cherokee Lake in Tennessee, and there was a dock and a brush pile. My buddy was trying to forward facing sonar some minnows, didn't get bit. And I said, "Hey man, can I throw my balsa bait up there?" And it was your wreck. It was your wreck bait, the mistake color. Love that mistake color. And sure enough, got a keeper. Fished it right over the brush pile. He come up and got it.
Yeah,
that was pretty awesome.
Yeah, having a bait that'll come through cover is just common sense. It's going to catch more fish than one that gets stuck.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Trying to figure out how to ask this question. How do you decide whether you're going to use a balsa bait over a plastic? Is it temperature? Is it conditions?
It has nothing to do with temperature other than the one thing we were talking about earlier. If I'm cranking and it's really cold, I'm going to throw a tight action balsa bait. Okay, that's just what I have confidence in. Not saying there's no other baits out there that won't work. And the tight action thing, it works, but I look at some of the other most popular historic cold water crankbaits, like a wiggle wart, and it has the exact opposite of a tight action. So I think sometimes we make it more complicated than it has to be, but I do really like a balsa bait when it's cold. I'll give you a scenario where I'm going to crank a plastic bait. If I go to like a ledge fishing lake, let's say like a Kentucky lake, and those fish are grouped up in June or May offshore, and I'm going to make 2,000 casts all day long and crank a big bait. I'm going to crank Jackal's Diggle. It just works better. It just casts better. It's easier to get depth out of. And the other scenario that I'll choose a plastic bait over a balsa bait is if I'm faced with a situation where I feel like I have to have a super natural color, like real clear water. If I have real clear water and real sunshiny days without a lot of wind, then I feel like I need like a transparent color. Say I've been on a lake for a couple of days. Say I've been at Cayuga, and Cayuga is a phenomenal cranking lake. Right there where you live, it's one of the best summertime cranking lakes that I've ever fished. And so we've had a couple of days where the wind's been blowing, it's been overcast, and I'm out there cranking the outside edge of that grass with my 300 proof, which runs perfect for that lake. It's a 12 to 14 foot bait. I have smashed them on Cayuga time after time after time. I've went up there on my 300 proof crankbait, and it's balsa. But say on day 3 they turn the wind off, and the clouds go away. And I've been catching them cranking, and now I'm going down through my little stretches that I had been catching a bunch of fish off of, and now I can just feel them maybe tick the bait. They won't commit to it, or I hook a couple and they come off, or they're hooked on the outside of the head. They're just not getting the bait like they used to be. I'm going to reach in there and get one that's transparent, because you're dealing with super clear water, and now the conditions have given the fish a lot better visibility, advantage. So at that point in time, I'll switch to the plastic bait. So the flip side of that would be pretty much if I'm choosing balsa over plastic, it's basically always going to be based around two things other than the real cold water. Take that out of the equation. It's going to be based on the type of cover that I'm fishing and, really and truly, the type of cover that I'm fishing probably has the biggest impact. I said two things, but the type of cover that I'm going to fish probably has the biggest impact. Balsa baits come through cover better. That's just the nature of the beast. The only cover that I feel like a balsa bait doesn't come through better is grass. A small square bill, plastic square bill, oftentimes if you have a real thick hydrilla or a milfoil or something like that up shallow, but I've actually built some balsa baits in the last several years that I've kind of aimed at that. I've made my own version of a 1.5. It comes through grass great. But by and large, if you took, let's just look at what most guys would have in their tackle box. Okay. If you took a Balsa B1, which is a fat bodied, it's got a wide lip, and you compared it to a KVD, or not, I shouldn't use it. Let's just say a plastic square bill 1.5 type bait. If you go crank grass, you're going to hate that KB, that Bagley, B1. It's just a wide lip. It's got a real wild action, and it's just not going to free itself out of that grass very well. If you go crank wood, you're going to want to kiss it when the day's over. It's going to be your best friend. Just the opposite. If you try to take a run-of-the-mill 1.5 bait plastic and crank wood like what I have down here, it's going to drive you crazy. You're going to stay hung up over and over and over and over and over. You take that same bait, that fat-bodied, wide-lip square bill, and tie it on, and your problems are solved. So for me, it really has more to do with the cover that I'm fishing than anything else.
Nice.
I remember the old guys said, if you're fishing lay downs of wood, use a wood bait. I mean, that's from guys way back in the 90s.
Yeah, I mean, and there's a bunch of us guys that like to build homemade wood plugs, and we've built wood plugs now that are great in scenarios that are not throwing them in wood. But if just as a good rule of thumb, yeah, I would agree with that. Your wooden baits are going to perform better typically in wood cover than a plastic bait will.
Yeah. I know a few guys too, that old guys swear by mono steel. They say it kind of like, like shocks that you get hung up, and your bait comes out, and the mono gives you a little more stretch. Now, do you fish? Yeah. Do you fish your wood baits on fluoro or mono?
I fish them on fluorocarbon. I do. I do fish them on fluorocarbon. But I do know what you're talking about. A lot of guys do say that they can snap a bait off by popping their line because of the stretches in that line. I've just gotten really comfortable. The thing I like about the fluorocarbon is I can feel so much better with it, and I can keep that bait from getting hung up better than being able to snap it off, right? And I'd much rather it just not get hung up to begin with.
Yeah,
and that's the same reason I don't crank with a glass rod. A lot of guys love a glass rod, and if I'm cranking grass, a glass rod's fine. But no way will I crank wood with a glass rod, just because I want to be able to feel what that bait's doing. Once you kind of learn to take advantage of the benefits that like a balsa bait and wood cover gives you, where you're kind of feeling your way through there, you can make it to where it just about never, ever gets hung.
Yeah.
And to me, that's more important than being able to snap it off with a piece of monofilament line.
Yeah. And that fluorocarbon, you have a fish kind of miss at it. You have mono, you never feel it. And your fluorocarbon, you can feel it. You just kind of lose feel of it, like somebody's cut your line. Seems like you don't get that on mono.
I think the biggest problem a lot of guys run into is everybody thinks, to crank with a smaller size line, like a smaller size diameter line, like, oh, this is my crankbait rod, maybe I should put 12-pound test on it. And that's all fine and good. If you're fishing open water or you're fishing a flat bait on rock or gravel, or the outside edge of a grass line. But when you fish a balsa bait in wood cover, put that rascal on some big string. And the main reason for that, and it doesn't matter if it's fluorocarbon or mono, that bigger diameter line, most of the time when you hang a balsa bait, it's because your line went in a crack on the tree. When you get up there and look at the bait, if you can see it, the hooks on the bait are not even hung. It's just binded into the side of that tree. And what's happened is your line has went in a crack. As a tree gets old, that's what makes this down here so hard to crank. Is a lot of this stuff down here in these cypress swamps, that stuff's been there for hundreds of years, and it's really decayed. It's really soft, and that smaller diameter line will cut into it or find a crack, and that's where you're actually getting hung up. If you'll step your line up to, like, say 20, you're fishing basically, I'm fishing less than 5 foot deep anyway, so depth isn't really an issue. Don't have the clearest of water. By up into a bigger diameter line, you're keeping your line from being able to cut its way into a soft piece of wood, and you're also keeping it from being able to go in as small of a crack. So you'll eliminate a lot of your hangups by just using a bigger diameter line versus using a mono or a fluorocarbon, in my opinion.
And then down there you got pine trees, pine bark, and them, you get one that's got the, the pine cones still on there, and that'll get you.
It absolutely will. Bigger line will help with all that. Just a bigger diameter, like a 17 or 20.
Okay. Let's go. We got a couple of comments and questions over here. We'll run through them real quick. Andrew Pulliam says, "What's up, guys? Hey, Cliff, congrats on all the successes." I
appreciate it.
All right.
And Eddie Carper says, "Fact as far as the balsa baits backing up."
Yep.
And he also says balsa is the best to throw in wood.
Absolutely. Amen.
Yes. And Andrew wants to know, what rod do you use for balsa crankbaits?
Okay, so about 10 or 11 years ago, I built a series of rods for Temple Fork Outfitters. They allow me to build a signature series of rods that were called the Pacemaker series. And one of those rods was a 704 crankbait rod. And I have cherished that rod. Now, understand, they let me build it for me, right? They just told me, we don't care how many times it takes, how many prototypes we have to make. You get it to where you love it. And I did. Those rods have been taken out of production now. Everything moves forward. TFO wanted to, to design new products moving forward. Technology's gotten better, and that's what they need to do. So they've continued to move forward, and they currently have a rod series called a Resolve. And in the Resolve family, they make a rod called a 7'1" medium plus. And I really like that particular rod. It really reminds me a lot of my original Pacemaker 704, but it's not exact, but it is close. But I'm actually working with the guys at Temple Fork to look at building basically a remake of my 704 Pacemaker, and maybe doing a collaboration between Black Label and TFO. TFO now has a rod building facility here in the U.S., and they're wanting to do it here in their U.S. factory, so it'll be a USA made product. And I've got 2 of those prototypes, and they are awesome. I can't wait to put those on the market. But man, if you're looking for a rod to buy for balsa baits, my recommendation would be the Resolve 7'1" medium plus, or wait until the prototype that we have now becomes available on the market. But if you're not wanting to wait, or you're just looking in general, my recommendation is I like a 7 foot to a 7 foot. Anything from 7 to 7'2" is fine. And the main thing I'm looking for in a rod that I'm going to throw any bait with treble hooks on, doesn't matter if it's a crankbait, doesn't matter if it's a jerk bait, a topwater bait, whatever. I want a rod that's really parabolic, especially when I'm using fluorocarbon line, which is what most of us are using now. Fluorocarbon line has a far less stretch rate than what mono does. And as all of us have moved away from mono and went to fluorocarbon, I feel like there's a huge problem with the fast action rods in fluorocarbon line. It's almost like it's too much. You've eliminated the stretch from the line, and now you've made a rod that reacts a lot faster, and it'll just get you in a mess if you're not careful. But I think that any medium action 7 foot to 7'2" rod that suits you, that's parabolic, I think would serve you well, for throwing balsa baits.
Awesome.
Nice. Yep. Andrew says thank you. He's gonna look in the TFOs. Tim Stackus, right down the road from me, says, any plans to expand your Black Label lineup to include jigs, spinnerbaits, buzzbaits, etc.? He says he knows you already have a signature jig designed for V&M.
Yeah, I don't have any plans to make any spinnerbaits or things of that nature right now. Spinnerbaits or jigs. I do have a little buzzbait that I've been playing with. I don't know what we're going to do with it. It's kind of a designed to be a skirtless buzzbait. It's actually one that I've been making for myself now for about 5 or 7 years. We throw a buzzbait a bunch down here in the Delta in the summertime. But to answer your question, no, I'm still involved. Have a great relationship with the guys at V&M. I hope it continues for a long time. And I actually, besides making balsa baits, my shop actually manufactures a lot of lead products as well. And we actually, the V&M jigs are all manufactured under my roof. So it's kind of like I already have, it's just in a different brand. But yeah, all the V&M jigs, as well as all the V&M soft plastics, are manufactured under my roof in my shop in Petal, Mississippi. So for now, I'm going to hold off. I don't know that I have enough hands to juggle any more irons in the fire. So I'm going to hold off for now on building any kind of jigs or spinnerbaits for Black Label. But you never know what the future might hold. But right now, I'm busy enough with what I got going on, especially now that I've added all these plastics.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely.
Eddie Carper says never. He's from Oklahoma. He says never crank wood with a glass rod.
I'm with you, Eddie. I agree 100%. I know there's a lot of guys that'll argue with us until we're all dead, but I don't like a glass rod and wood cover either. It just doesn't work for me. 20-pound line. Yep, you got it.
Yep.
So
he's old school.
Okay. John Adams with Star Lure says, good evening, fellows. Andrew says, thanks. He's going to look into the TFOs.
Yep.
And Eddie Carper agrees with you 100%. He says, you're exactly correct.
Yep. All right. Caught up.
All right. Phew. So I'm going to email you or text you or send you a message later to find out what baits you use on Cayuga Lake crankbait. So
I can cover that for you.
Oh, here we go.
What's that? Go ahead.
I said, yeah, I can cover that for you. The bait that I love to crank the outside edge of the grass up there in the summertime with is a bait I make called a 300 proof. On 12-pound test line, that'll run 12 to 14 foot, and it's tighter than most any deep diving bait you're going to buy, and it's silent. And that tighter action and the silent aspect of it and that clear water on Cayuga on the outside edge of that grass, it just makes it the perfect fit. It just fits that lake. Pretty much anywhere on the northern end of that lake in the summertime, you'll have an outside grass line that's anywhere from that, 10 to 14 foot. And that bait just fits that depth perfect. It's like when I went there the first time, it was like I felt like I made that bait for that lake. It just fits perfect, just because of the depth and the size of it. But the 300 proof is the one you want. Probably don't need them until about July. It's not real good to fish through a hole in the ice, so probably can live without it for now.
Yeah,
but time to stock up though.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you can use your flat sides in the through the ice.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's see.
But,
I'm just
real quick. I know I've seen some of your videos. You got the little carousel for you. You've made a lot of neat jigs and whatnot. I thought that was pretty cool. I know when you kind of bought the molds from WEC, back in the day. Can you go over that kind of process? How you ended up with some of the WEC molds and whatnot?
Well, I didn't actually buy any molds. There are no molds.
Oh, okay.
Balsa baits are not made out of molds.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
I'm actually taking for a lack of better words, let's just call a 2x4. So yep. I mean, I literally am taking a stick of wood, and running it through a machine that will basically replicate the template that I put on it. So you don't have a mold, but you do have a template.
Okay.
And you put the template in the machine, and it will basically rough cut. They still have to finish them and sand them, and there's still a lot of work to them, but it will get you the rough cut shape.
Yeah.
But I just got fortunate to buy, Mr. Ed's machine that he used to make the WEC stuff. I never really got to know Ed. I would have loved to have known him. I think the two of us would have gotten along really well. We're both really passionate about something that most people aren't. So normal when you put two people together that love the same thing, we either loved each other or hated each other. It would have went one way or the other. But Ed made some phenomenal baits, and I grew up fishing. I mean, I have boxes and boxes and boxes of Ed's baits, and I've even brought some of Ed's baits back to life. So there's some WEC models. Guys have found out that I bought some of his equipment. They're like, "Oh man, can you please make me some of this or some of that?" And a few of them I have kind of replicated and brought back to life. But I don't know how I ended up with it. A good friend of mine that I do a lot of lead work for with Greenfish Tackle. His name's John Hare. Yep. He's been a customer of mine. I've helped him, getting his lead based products produced, and he called me and was like, "Hey, I know the guys down at Zoom pretty well, and they're talking about selling some of his equipment. Would you be interested?" And I said, "Yeah, absolutely. Give me the number." And I called them, and it just kind of worked out. But it's a cool thing to have. It really is. It's something that's neat to me to be able to own and use, and I still use it daily, just about.
Oh, yeah. Okay. You could tell WC Ed Chambers had a passion. I mean, it's not plastics, but he had a special passion for the Balsa baits.
He did. He absolutely did.
Yeah. I know, like you were talking earlier, as far as replicating the baits to be exact, and you cannot do that with a wood bait because of the densities and all that stuff. I've actually had some of the old Pose jackpots. Friend of mine, Craig Kettlecamp, up here, and we sent them to some people to try to replicate, and they can't do it.
Right.
Even cutting them in half, and that was a sad day to watch people cut your bait in half. And
ouch.
Yeah.
Hey,
you called it a jackpot?
Yes.
I don't guess I'm familiar with that. I've got a bunch of Pose baits. I've got a lot of the old 1s, 2s, and 3s.
It's a top water. It was a top. They're top water walking bait.
Was it a cedar bait?
Yes.
I know all the other stuff from Pose was cedar.
Yeah.
I'm not familiar with that, and there's not very many of them out there that I don't recognize or maybe even have one or two of. But I can't say that I'm familiar with the Pose walking bait. That's a new one to me.
Oh. I ain't never heard that either. And I'm like you. I've seen everything. But and then go back. I remember George Cochran when we won, I think, a bass event one time. It was on a Bagley, and this was back 100 years ago when Bagley was working out of his garage, and he called him, "Hey, give me 100 baits." He's like, "Well, okay, George. Well, we need 100 for." He said, "No, out of the 100 baits, I might get 10 or 15. It's got that hunting action that you want."
Exactly what he wanted to do. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And he said he gave the rest to his co-anglers or made keychains out of.
Yeah, I've got to spend a lot of time over my career with Gary Klein, and Gary was really good friends with Rick Clun. And Clun and Gary used to say the same thing. They would buy, back in those days, back in the 80s and 90s, that they would buy a surplus of Bagleys. Yep. And they would tune them and look at them in a swimming pool and number them, 1, 2, 3, yep. 1 being the best, 3 being the worst. But they were looking for the exact opposite. They wanted it to run in an exact straight line, not to have that left to right. And it's crazy to me. I make a bait called a Ricochet Junior, and I designed it to have that left to right. Most every one of them you buy has some left to right. And then I've got other baits that I've designed to run in a perfectly straight line. And you have people that love one, hate the other one, hate one, love the other one. It's actually kind of comical to me, but
yeah,
it's amazing to me how, in our sport, what one person feels like is the best, another person feels like is the worst, and everybody has success with what they're using, on some level or another. But yeah, that was the issue with a lot of those balsa baits that were made back then is they just weren't very durable. And when you got a good one, it had a limited amount of lifespan, right? You couldn't, that they didn't have the materials that we have now from the coatings and top coats and things. What we're using now is so much better than what they had available to them back then. They were doing the best they could with what was available to make the bait with. I can remember even some of Ed's early baits back around 2012, 14, when I was fishing with a lot of his baits, that I would buy them and you'd fish with them for a day and you'd look at them and they'd be starting to get roughed up and and I made my own back then too. So I would know, I was like, man, I need to take this one and let it dry out real good and put me another coat of clear coat on it so that it'll last longer. But there's a lot of older guys that I think went through that same process trying to find those, absolute perfect niche baits. And technology now has gotten to where we can just about produce them, and they're pretty consistent. I feel like the baits we're producing now out of wood are far more consistent than what we were able, technology enabled to be made years ago.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Yeah, I know you heard of. Yep, there it is. That's pretty neat.
Yeah. And that's a pose bait.
Yes.
That's the first one I've ever seen.
Me too.
I got them in, I think, 99, 98, 99.
Yeah. that was about Pose's heyday.
Yeah.
Late 90s. That was when the Pose 300 and the Pose 400 and Clun had his little RC1 and RC3. That's kind of when all that was going. I've still got a bunch of Pose 300s that are, y'all remember the old fish shaped box that they came in?
Yeah.
I've still got a bunch that's never even been opened.
Oh, heck.
I used to work at a tackle shop who had a lot of those. And when they're getting ready to close down, a guy came in, bought I think he had 500 Pose crankbaits and bought them all, put them on eBay to make. He says, I'll sell these for $8-10 a piece.
Yeah. Yeah, I did the same thing, but I kept them all.
Yeah, it's hard to get rid of them.
I went to a tackle store one day that was the same scenario, and I asked the guy that owned it, I was like, well, how much do you want for the whole wall? And he gave me a price, and I said, well, take them all down and I'll buy them all. And over the years, the ones that are, this was before I was making my own. My 300 proof, if you were a fan of the Pose 300, you'll love my 300 proof that I make for Black Label. Very similar bait. Mine dives a little deeper. It's a little tighter, and it casts a little better than what a Pose did. But similar, very much so similar. But prior to me having my 300 proof, I would take those old Pose if they were a color I didn't want. Because Pose made some wild colors.
Yes, they did.
Some wild, loud colors. So the knowledge that I gained from that of stripping those old Pose and rebuilding them, it kind of helped me I used that moving forward when I started manufacturing my own. But that's kind of where I started with a lot of it. I mean, I built some balsa baits. I actually built the first set of balsa baits that I can say I made that was, more than just one that I'd carved with a pocket knife or something. But the first, say a set of 6 or 8 that I made for my senior project in high school. And I graduated in 1998. And that's what I made for my senior project in high school, was a set of handmade balsa baits. And they were flat sides because that's all I could cut out. Yeah. I made them in shop class. We cut them out on a scroll saw and just round the edges and off you go. But over all those years of really and truly, what got me into making balsa baits was I probably wouldn't have ever started making my own if the demand wouldn't have went away. If Takahiro Mora wouldn't have won the classic on a balsa bait, the demand or the production of them was just kind of everybody had switched to plastic because plastic is so much easier. It's so much more cost effective. It's so much faster. And it's so much easier. Even Bagley's has made a bunch of plastic baits. So, I mean, that tells you all you need to know right there. But when Takahiro won the Classic, that was kind of what, I think that was in 2003, maybe.
Yeah.
That's kind of what regenerated the demand for an actual balsa bait. But prior to that, I graduated high school in '98, was, fishing every chance that I got on the Louisiana Delta, and there wasn't any to buy. I mean, those baits at Takahiro, I remember when he won the Classic, he was talking about he had bought those baits. eBay had just became a thing, I think, back then. And he was buying them on eBay, just rat holing them because, like I said, they wouldn't hold up very long, But I basically started making my own just to have some. They were just for me. It was a kind of a supply and demand deal.
Nice.
Absolutely.
We're falling behind here on some comments, so let's get some of the comments back up for you, Cliff.
Yep.
Off the Hook says, "What's going on, guys?" Eddie Carper says, "Sounds like money. Must be." And Chris McCarter says, "I believe Nick LeBrun went to TFO. He fished with them in an open."
Awesome.
He did. Nick's a great guy. Nick's been a friend of mine for a long, long time. Really happy to see Nick develop the career that he has, and he's over at MLF now, and I miss getting to see him. I haven't seen him since I left to go back to Bass, but Nick is definitely with TFO now, and super nice guy.
Yes.
Oh, absolutely. One of the best.
Tim says, "Thank you. He loves the content you continue to share. Appreciate you sharing your knowledge, and he's learned a ton from you."
Well, that's great. That's kind of why we do the content. It's just to kind of help. I actually did a little painting video today of me painting one of my, let's just say, a little bit more complex colors for Black Label. And Tiffany is actually editing it right now while I'm talking to y'all. Great to have a good wife.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Mine came down and dropped me off a cup of coffee and said goodbye before she went to work.
You've taught her well.
Eddie says, "I'm a bit short of balsa baits. John can get you my number. I'd like a good collection of balsa crankbaits from Black Label." Look, you don't need anybody's phone number. Just go to my website. My website is www.woodbaitcountry.com. And there's other online vendors as well that carry some Black Label. Tackle Warehouse has a good selection. Several other online guys sell it. But my personal website that me and Tiffany own and operate is woodbaitcountry.com. And I've got more I guarantee y'all, this is a pretty strong statement, but outside, there you go. That's it right there. Awesome. Outside of, say, Rapala's distribution warehouse, wherever that's at in America, I guarantee you that at Woodbait Country, we've got the largest selection of balsa baits in America, without question.
Absolutely.
So they can get you fixed up.
Awesome.
I do remember the Tennessee Shad.
I got some.
Yep. I don't know if I have any left or not. I've got a lot of homemades from Tennessee. I've got some, some of the old Sonny McFarland, Petey's, and there's a gentleman named Rob Cochran who is a friend of mine. He kind of took up. He's from Tennessee. He kind of took up where Sonny left off when Sonny quit making them, and he's got some of his own designs, but he also still manufactures some of Sonny's. But there's a lot of cool balsa baits that have came out of Tennessee. Oh, yeah. Tennessee, the Midwest is really. I'm kind of the black sheep of the balsa bait family as far as location is concerned. The only thing Mississippi's probably known for from a crankbait would be Bandit.
Yeah,
the Bandit crankbait started and originated here in Mississippi, up in Sardis, and then I've done what I've done with Black Label. But most of your balsa bait manufacturing is, the Bagleys and systems were made in Florida, and then most of your homemades, are Tennessee, Ohio. You've got Phil Hunt with PH Custom Lures. He's also a friend of mine. He's in Indiana. That Midwest region. And is really where most of your homemades come from.
Right. There's I don't know if you ever heard the Wee Bait, West England.
Wes passed away. Wes passed away last year. But yeah, I've got a bunch of Wes's baits too. Now, Wes's baits, if you want a bait that's original, and what I mean is there ain't another one like it.
No.
Wes's bait was the bait. And I don't think Wes ever made two baits that were the same.
No.
Even if they were the same family. But he did make some pretty unique baits, very inconsistent, but for that niche thing that we're talking about earlier, there's guys that I know have some, we always call them wee baits.
Yeah.
He had WE on it, which was Wes England.
Yep.
So there's some wee baits out there that are for sure one of a kind.
Yeah, I got some, and they in the lock and key in the safe.
Yeah.
And smallmouth love them, I guarantee you.
Any thoughts of making top waters?
I got them, brother.
Do you?
We make a topwater walking bait called a law dog. We make a topwater prop bait, or I should say, called a tease. I make a popping type bait called a popping bob. I've got a friend of mine that's a great woodworker, built cabinets and stuff. And his name is Bob Greenwood. He comes to my shop all the time. He's retired now, and he loves to throw a popper. So we set in, decide to make us a Balsa popper, and that's what I ended up naming it, was the Poppin' Bob, after him, because he helped me build it, or helped me create the original fixtures. That's what everybody doesn't realize about these Balsa baits, man. Like you were talking about earlier, all the little fixtures and stuff.
Yep.
Once you finally get one that's exactly the way you want it to be, it takes a tremendous amount of time to build all the little fixtures to be able to replicate that. But yeah, we have on Woodbait Country, if you look under the Black Label family, the tease is a topwater bait. The law dog is a topwater walking style bait. The popping bob is a pop-ar style bait. And then I make another bait called a heads up, which is a wake bait that I think is incredible. Most of your stick type wake baits, like the old long A's and things like that guys used to try to fish on the surface, they were so hard to keep on the surface. And my heads up, you can throw it on a casting rod. You don't have to throw it on a spinning rod. Cast really good, and it does not go under the surface. It's an awesome, lazy rolling wake bait. And then I also make a topwater called a battle toad, which is like a plopper style, but it's got a metal wire coming out of a balsa bait. It's kind of a frog-shaped body. It's got a metal wire coming out of the tail, and it's got a metal blade on it with a rivet like a buzzbait. So it's like a plopper, but it has that squeak aspect that we all love about a buzzbait kind of tied into it. So quite a few topwaters there in the Black Label family already, but I do intend to add a few more. I think I'm getting up to somewhere around 75 models in the Black Label family already. So it's getting harder to add, but I do want to make a larger walking bait. The law dog that I have, it's great. I've caught a ton of fish on it. You're talking about a bait that the smallmouth love. That law dog is phenomenal up there in that clear water because it's silent. When you get those real still mornings and you don't want a bait that's like a one knocker type, you don't want a bait that's loud, it's too much. Those smallmouth are just nuts over that law dog.
Wow. Well, add that to my list.
I'm just amazed at like all the colors that you come up with.
Yeah, I think I've got 160 or 70 different catalog colors. Not all of them are available in all models. We do custom stuff though. So, I painted some custom stuff today where a guy called and was like, hey, I love this model, but I love this color that you make in this other model. Can you make me some of those in this model that you don't offer it in? And if a guy's willing to buy, a half a dozen or so, then that's no problem. It's a little bit of lead time, and the lead time is more this time of the year because, in a couple of weeks, I'm going to be back fishing the tour. So I won't be at my shop, 100 hours a week painting crankbaits and making plastics and everything else. So it is a little longer wait time, but, I can do pretty much any color that you wanted to do unless it's like a printed color. I've had some guys ask, hey, can you replicate this as that color? And a lot of your real high detail baits that are mass produced are screen printed because they can't afford to pay the labor to have someone sit there and hand paint them all. And a lot of those screen printed baits, you just about can't hand paint.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Here we go. Couple quick comments.
Ben Ryan's going to miss you on the MLF.
Yeah, that was a hard decision to make, but it was just kind of a personal decision for me. I'll be honest with y'all. I mean, I want to fish where my heart is, and I just grew up. And it's not that I'm choosing one organization over the other. I'm choosing me. Yeah. I grew up watching Bob Cobb with Bassmasters. It just, I don't know. It just has that. To me, it just means more, and I don't know why it should. It shouldn't. MLF is a great organization, but I will say I really like the aspect of fishing for a 5-fish limit. You know, we did that for 1 year at MLF, and that 1 year I realized how much I did miss competing that way. And, you know, they chose to go back to the Every Fish Counts for their own personal reasons. And that's kind of between me wanting to, you know, my heart wanting to fish bass and wanting to fish for a 5-fish limit type format again. That was just enough for me to make the decision to go back. So, but there are things about MLF I'm going to miss. My biggest problem is all my buddies fish MLF, so I don't get to see them anymore.
Yeah, that's true. Jeremy May says, hello, Mr. Ace, Mr. Welch, and Johnny Boy. That'd be me. Late to the party, he was on a date with his little ladies.
Oh, understand.
Yep, his girls.
Yep, understand. Got to make time. Got to make time. And let's see.
I'm gonna ask y'all a question. What's this MGM call tags all about?
I make call tags.
Right.
Yep. It's MGM call tags. I don't even have any here, do I? No, I sent them all out. I sent them all out. I'm sorry. No, I'll send you pictures of them and let you take a look at them. But no, I make them here. They're easy one-handed clip. There's 6 or 7 different colors.
I got some in the garage. That's too far to walk.
Yeah, they float. They're tangle free.
Well, they sound good.
You got numbers on them.
You got numbers on them, and each tag is color coded with a different color. So whether you use the numbers or the colors to keep track, you got that as well. And I can custom color them too. Like I have a guy who wants specific colors per tag, per number. So I'm making them for him.
Well, that's cool. Do you actually inject the injection molding there yourself, or do you have that outsourced?
No, I buy parts and put them together.
I got you. Cool.
Yeah.
I'm reading one of the comments from Jeremy says.
We're talking about Balsa baits. There's a show in Knoxville. I know you heard the East Tennessee Fishing Show. Tons of Balsa baits there.
Yeah, that I've had a lot of guys ask me, you know, why I don't go to that show, and I would love to go to the show. I would love to meet all those guys. Like I said, I'm friends with a lot of them. That's the cool thing about most of us guys that build Balsa baits is we're all kind of each other's competition in a way, but the passion of it kind of makes us all become friends at the end of the day. I mean, I'm good friends with Rob Cochran. I'm good friends with Phil Hunt. I have other guys that, you know, that I know well that make Balsa baits on smaller levels than those two guys. But a lot of guys have asked me why I don't go to that show, and my answer is it's just bad timing. You know, from January the 1st every year to our first tournament is just a cram. Between everything I got going on at my shop and sponsor obligations, boat shows, traveling, getting my new boat rigged and getting jerseys ordered and everything else, it's very difficult for me to try to go to that show. But hopefully one day I will get to go see it. And that's probably the best show in the country to go look. That or maybe the show up in Indianapolis, the Indy show.
Yep.
I think both of those have a big, quite a few guys that bring homemade balsa baits and display them and sell them there.
Oh, yeah. Fisher says, "Howdy, guys. Didn't see you today, Rob Welch." Well, I was working today. Go work tomorrow. I'll be there Saturday though. Look for me Saturday.
All right. Cliff, I apologize. I do have a set. Okay, so here's the clip.
Here we go. Okay.
And it's angled down so it stays in.
Right.
Okay. Here's the top of it. There we go. I gotta get it on the screen.
There it is.
Yep. There's the color with the number.
I see the little number on it.
And
they float.
Yep.
They float. There's the body. This is the I call that the Patriot, the red, white, and blue.
Gotcha.
And that's pretty much it. Ricky Hurd says, I passed him up one time coming out of Beaumont, Texas on I-10. A few years ago, cool guy. Wish I could have had him stop to talk for a few minutes.
Yeah. Yeah. Ricky's my buddy. How's it going, Ricky? Here's your seal of approval right here, John.
MGM cold tags are simple, but very legit and will not come off.
Well, that's all you need.
That's it. I have pictures of them hold big fish on there as well. People holding them up by the string. Black Label has won me a lot of money on the James River.
That's always good to hear.
There you go, man.
He's not sharing that with you, Cliff. That's not right.
Yeah. Well, that's okay. That's all right. The James River is very similar to what we fish down here.
Yeah.
And that's just balsa bait paradise,
Yeah. Reminds me of the Jordan River down there. Jordan River's a lot like that. It seems like
very similar. Yep. Very similar.
Yep. But real quick, Cliff, I know you've been starting making kind of some plastic baits. You want to kind of just say what you got on your plastic line or coming up?
I have. I introduced my plastic line basically a year ago this week. The Black Label soft plastics, a kind of a growing family there. We and I'm kind of like you with your cold tags. I don't have any with me. They're all in my shop, but you can look at them all on my website, which is Woodbait Country. There's two. When you open Woodbait Country, you'll see there's a box that's got a bunch of little black, lines, sentences in it. And there's one that says custom Black Label balsa, and there's one that says custom Black Label plastics. And all the soft plastics are made in my facility. We're not outsourcing anything. We do all our own injection work, and we've kind of got a pretty good little product line going now. We've got quite a few flipping baits, creature style baits you can use to flip with, use for trailers, be it as a jig trailer or on a bladed jig. Make a bug and a bug junior, which is really good flipping style bait. Make a CP crawl, which is a great flipping bait, great trailer. It's one of my favorite things to put on a swim jig. I make a bait called a piglet, which would be, like a tailed out creature bait. Mine has just got a little bit more mass to it, a little more meat, a little more body. I can put a bigger hook in it. Basically, all I did with Black Label is I took baits that were baits that I currently liked certain characteristics about, but not others. And I just made them to where I felt like they suited the way I use them better. Yeah. And started trying to do some kind of unique things. There's so many plastics on the market. It's hard to get very unique. I mean, there's literally thousands of versions of just about every popular shape soft plastic there is out there. And we've gotten into making, some live scope type stuff. I've got really 3 baits that are aimed at live scope. One of them is called a player shad, which is a little 3D printed 3-inch shad, super cool bait. It's deadly right now down here with the cold water. They're keying on those small bait fish. It's absolutely phenomenal up there on those smallmouth lakes. And then I've got, a 4-inch version of that now that's actually got suspension wings on the front corners of it so that it helps the bait stay level and it generates a rolling action. And then I've got another bait that I just released recently called a Snapshot, which is a 3.8-inch bait that I absolutely love on a jig head live scoping. And the main reason why is because it has a direction change. You know, most of your small baits, whenever you're fishing with them, when you twitch them, they just come straight at you, like what my hand's doing. And when I designed the Snapshot, I really wanted a bait that had a small profile that would have some left to right action. So when I'm twitching it, it's actually kind of going not the same, just forward to me. And that's kind of where the Snapshot derives from. The hollow point and the hollow point finesse are basically our straight tail worms. The player worm is basically a worm that I designed to be, you know, a good drop shot bait. But no, the plastics thing has kind of been a unforeseen adventure. I started dabbling with making a bunch of my own. I got to be good friends with an individual named Lance Kirby with Kirby Design and Manufacturing, and he makes all these molds, and that just opened up the door for me to be able to draw whatever I wanted and send it to him and him make me a mold for it. And now I've got 4 full-size injection machines and enough aluminum to build a decent sized bridge out of. And I really didn't plan to be as big into it as I am, but I'm glad that I did. It's been a really it's been a fun deal to kind of watch move forward. Fun and frustrating at the same time. There's learning curves and everything, but I'm actually doing some OEM manufacturing now. Like I mentioned earlier, I was manufacturing all of V&M soft plastics now moving forward. They're all manufactured by me as well as all my black label, and I've got a couple other brands I'm starting to do some work for. So it's definitely something that's keeping me busy, as if I didn't have enough going on already. But, you know, I can go to my shop and I can make anything that I want to fish with other than like a fishing rod or a piece of fishing line. You know, I can make anything I want on a lead. I can make any type of shaky head, jig, buzzbait, spinnerbait, you name it. If it's a lead-based head, I can produce my own mold for it. We produce our own molds for that in-house. Anything made out of any kind of wood, balsa wood. I don't really like messing with cedar. It's pretty rough on the sinuses, but any kind of a wooden bait that I want, I can design and build my own. And now I'm able to do the same thing with soft plastics. So it's been fun. I'm a tinkerer at heart. I love to build things with my hands, and I love to fish. So it's kind of, you know, manufacturing baits is kind of the perfect storm for me. The one thing for me is I'm either fishing or building something I can fish with basically 365 days a year. So it keeps me pretty well connected to everything. You just have to just kind of, this time of the year, it can be hard to not get overwhelmed because it's kind of the busy season for my business as well as our tournament trail starting to kick off at the same time. So a lot going on, but I'm very thankful for what all I have going on and for all the people that follow and support me and Black Label and all my other sponsors. But it's been a fun ride, and it's one that I'm looking forward to seeing where it goes.
Absolutely.
We got a bunch of comments. We're not going to be able to get to all of them because I don't want to keep you much longer. So Jeremy says he's going to bring you some cold tags this weekend.
Oh, okay.
I don't know where you're at, but he said he'll bring them.
He's close.
Jeremy says, love all your Balsa and plastics. Keep up all the good ingenuity.
I'm working on
it. Every day.
Scott Knowles says he's a little late to the party. Cliff, what is your Balsa bait that's closest to a Fritz Side 5?
A Hickster.
Cool.
How about a 1-inch wood bait?
How about I'm thinking, is that a 1
in?
I don't know what he's
I'm
asking.
not sure.
He's talking about a
1 minus. They said 1 minus.
Or 1 foot.
Yeah, 1 foot.
If you're talking about a 1 foot depth, I have 2. I make a 1.5 version and what's called a 1.5 SSR, which stands for Super Shallow Runner. So I have a 1.5 SSR, and I also make a bait called a Bacon, which is a smaller, flatter sided balsa bait, and I have a Bacon SSR, and they're both on my website. You can look at them, and both of them will run basically a foot deep. So I have a 1.5 SSR, and I have a Bacon SSR.
All right.
Outstanding. And one last comment. And
we need a hovering bait that pauses around cypress trees without modifying.
A hovering bait. Yeah. We would have to get creative on that. The problem with those cypress trees is you still don't have enough water depth to really do a whole lot, but never know. Make new stuff all the time.
You go.
I got a final draft on my next production mold yesterday, and I got to play with it a bunch today, and I can't wait to put this thing out. It's a unique idea. It's not really like anything else that's on the market, and I'm really excited about it. I think it's going to really be something special. So cool. I'm constantly working on and designing new stuff. Probably too much. I probably spend too much time focused on that.
It is a blessing and a curse.
It is.
Jeremy's not a friend of the New York waters, by the way. He's afraid of them. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He came to Oneida one time to fish and open, and there was like 5 and 6 footers, and
them ponds up there get rough compared to what we got down here in South Mississippi. But I grew up fishing tournaments on the deltas and all these rivers down here, and it was very very common for us to, like you talking about the Jordan River. Well, if we fished on the Jordan River and I didn't like the Jordan River, I just run out in the Gulf of Mexico and go east or west to another river. So we didn't fish out in it, but I've definitely driven a boat through plenty of big water.
Get a little rough.
It definitely gets a little rough.
Rob did tell a fib. He said the last question, but I have one more for you.
Oh,
okay.
What's your favorite homemade cookie?
My favorite homemade cookie?
Yes, sir.
Oh, man, I don't know. Probably sugar cookies with chocolate chips in them.
Awesome.
I could smell the sugar cookies my wife just took out of the oven not too long ago, and it's killing me.
They can't touch them.
And I can't touch them.
Oh, they're off limits?
Cookie. Yes, they're off limits.
Well, that's just
they're for a customer.
Oh.
Yeah.
So if you buy a set of coal tags, you get some free cookies. Is that?
Ooh.
Is that what's going on here?
I don't know. We'll figure something out, Cliff.
That'd be worth it.
I'd like to thank you for coming on. Appreciate it. I know you've answered a lot of questions that I had pertaining to balsa baits. And Rob, you answered some of Rob's and our guests as well. Do you want to take a minute and talk about anything in particular as far as your baits?
Not really. I mean, there's a lot of Tiffany and I spend a lot of time making content. There's a lot of content about my baits, me fishing with them and depth test. And, you can find all that if you follow us on Facebook or, follow me or follow Woodbait Country or follow Black Label Tackle. We have 3 different pages that we manage on social media. Cliff-Based Fishing, Black Label Tackle, and Woodbait Country all have their own page. But we have a lot of really good content, and on our website, I've got a good description of every bait as far as basically the action of that bait, what I like to use that bait for, as well as the depth that bait runs. And I've actually got a bunch of stuff on YouTube. So there's a lot of content out there, about my baits. And the main thing is, and it kind of goes back to the question about the gentleman asked me what rod that I would recommend. Yes, I do love my TFO rods. I think they're great rods. I love my Black Label baits. I think they're great baits. But, for any person out there, you need to get what fits you. Yes. I'd love to let you try some of mine. I think you would love my balsa baits. If you fish where a balsa bait fits, where there's a need for it, I feel like you'll like mine as good as any there on the market. But it's just a passion-driven deal for me, and I appreciate everybody that supports it, and it lets me do it for a living, because it is really neat for me to get to do that for a living.
Absolutely.
For all you people that fish New York, Cliff said earlier in the show, they don't work on Cayuga Lake.
Man.
Well, thank you very much, sir. Appreciate
it.
It's
been my pleasure. I hope
Take
y'all have
care.
a great night, and I enjoyed the opportunity to talk to y'all.
I appreciate
you, sir.
it. You stay warm down there in South Mississippi.
Yeah, I will. Don't worry. As long as the heater don't break, we're staying warm.
There you go.
All right.
Beat it.
Take care, sir.
I appreciate it, buddy. All right. Wow, man, that was a lot of info in a short amount of time. Wow. Talking about some old school poles and stuff, man. You pulled out a lure that me or Cliff never saw before, man. That's yep.
You could tell it's old because, like, I don't know if you can see it or not, but no, you can't.
Hook rash, a little hook rash. I see a little bit of hook rash.
No, the paint's coming off it.
Oh yeah,
and it's down, and it's some places it's down to the wood.
Hey, I see a lot of pros throw baits like that and throw like top waters and square bills where it's just wood. I mean, they've thrown so much it's just down to the wood.
Yeah.
Yep.
But hey, thank you everybody. We apologize for not being able to get to all your comments, but we held Cliff a little bit too late.
A lot of good info. I hope everybody had their notebooks or go back on YouTube and watch the replay. I know I am because boy, that was a lot of juice, guys.
Yes. I don't fish a lot of wood, but he gave me some ideas.
I don't either.
Look, I got probably about 30 custom painted baits.
Yep.
Balsa baits. And I just don't, I don't know. I don't fish them. I'm not comfortable fishing them. Maybe I'll have to see if
you ever need to clear some room, just let me know. I'll take them off your hands.
Maybe I'll see if I can get a friend to take me out fishing, Tim Sakis.
There you go. But hey, you did save the day and you found a set of coal tags. So, hey, you saved the day, young man.
Well, I knew I had a set somewhere, but I'm like, oh, did I send them all to fish?
Oh, yep. But
no.
Yeah. Well, real quick, guys, talking about the East Tennessee Fishing Show, will be going on tomorrow. I think like 10 to 6 or 10 to 8. Starts at 10. Same Saturday, and I think it's like 12 to maybe 6 on Sunday. Don't quote me on that. Just giving ballpark. But we'll be there Saturday. And look up you ladies at Fisher. I'll be hanging out in the booth a little bit with them, helping them out, and plenty of great companies there. Our buddy Todd Go to have Pit Pulse fish there, and a lot of great booths. Great show. Gets bigger and bigger every year. So I hope y'all Knoxville area, somewhere close, make it out. It's be worth your time coming out.
And another thing with the Fisher ladies that are there, they do have some MGM cold tags.
There you go.
Right.
And I know they have the new backpacks and the way bags. So yeah, definitely go by and check them out and tell them Co-Angler's Corner sent you out.
All right. Thank you very much, sir. And Tim, thank you for the good comment.
Yep.
We're going to try to do that once or twice a month, have some different people on. So.
Oh, Jeremy May bringing it. Look here.
Check out my new video on my MGM cold tags. All right, Jeremy.
Outstanding,
we
brother.
Can try it. All right, everybody. Until Saturday, we have Robert Gibson. No.
Good friend of both ours. Great angler. Been sponsored. Man, he's the best by getting sponsors I've ever seen. So he's got a lot of good info. So guys, tune in and you'll learn a lot from him for sure. Great guy too.
Yes,
he's a veteran and supports a lot of veteran causes. Great guy.
And not just that, but he can cook on a grill.
Yes, he can, and he can barbecue like nobody's business. I'll go ahead and say that. And I'm a barbecue connoisseur. Just saying.
I'm a barbecuer eater.
Yeah.
I'm not quite the connoisseur. I just eat.
I qualify for that.
All right, folks. Well, take it easy, guys. And hopefully we'll see you Saturday at 7 p.m. All right.
Eastern time.
Yes.
For our viewers out of the country and the West Coast.
And Central.
Yeah, that's it. I appreciate you guys tuning in and subscribing, and hope we see you Saturday evening, and hope I see some of you at the East Tennessee Fishing Show. So if you see me walking through when my son is about 2 or 3 10 inches taller than me, holler at me.
All right. Peace out, y'all.